I never imagined that pretending to be a poor, innocent mother would expose so much darkness in a single dinner. But it did. It peeled back layers of cruelty, pride, and judgment I didn't even know existed. What happened that night still sits heavy in my chest, even now, as an old woman looking back at the moment my world, and my family, shifted forever. I've never shared this story publicly. Not with my friends, not even with my own son. It's one of those memories you lock away because it reveals far too much about the people you love, and the people you hope to love. You see, the first time I met my daughter-in-law's parents was supposed to be a polite, simple introduction. A quiet dinner. Some smiles. Some questions. A chance to build a bridge between families. But from the moment I walked into that restaurant, I realized I had stepped into something entirely different. Something colder, sharper, and far more revealing than I expected. And here is my confession, I didn't go as myself. I went as the woman they assumed I was. A poor, fragile, insignificant old mother with nothing to offer but a shy smile and worn-out shoes. I chose to wear my simplest dress, carry my oldest bag, and let my hair fall into a messy knot. I wanted to see, truly see, how they treated someone they believed had nothing. Whether kindness was in their nature, or if respect depended on wealth. What unfolded that evening left me speechless. The humiliation. The arrogance. The way they dissected my life with their eyes before I had even introduced myself. And then the moment, oh, that moment, when everything changed and their masks came crashing down. Dear listeners, before we begin this emotional journey, may I ask a small favor? If this story touches your heart, please like the video, subscribe, and comment where you're listening from. Your messages always brighten my day. Enjoy the story. Long before that dinner, long before the pretense. It started with the life I built quietly, far away from the judgment of people like them. People often assume an elderly woman's life shrinks as the years pass, that our stories fade, our worth softens, and our memories become dusty shelves no one bothers to look through. But the truth is, the older you get, the clearer everything becomes. You start to understand what matters, what doesn't, and which moments shape the person you've quietly become. Long before that disastrous dinner, before humiliation and truth collided, my life was simple. Peaceful, even. I lived in a modest apartment I'd rented for over 30 years, a place that smelled of old books, warm tea, and memories of my son growing up. Nothing fancy. Nothing extravagant. Just home. I'm the kind of woman who built her life around necessity, not luxury. Everything I owned had a purpose, a frayed coat for winter, a set of plates I'd used since my son was in elementary school, and an old sofa with just enough cushion left to support my aching back. I never felt the need for more. Age teaches you that comfort isn't found in things, it's found in the absence of stress, noise, and chasing what you don't need. Raising my son alone shaped nearly every year of my adult life. His father left before he could say his first words. I don't resent him now. Time has a way of softening old wounds, but those early years were a relentless climb. I worked long hours in small office jobs, anything I could get, juggling paperwork by day and motherhood by night. There were months when the electricity bill hovered dangerously close to being overdue, but somehow, I always made it through. I cooked simple meals, patched old clothes, and saved every coin I could. Hardship became routine, but so did determination. My son grew up seeing that. Seeing me stretch every dollar. Seeing me put aside my own needs for his future. And I was proud of that. I didn't want him spoiled or entitled. I wanted him grounded and respectful. For the most part, he was. But everything changes once they fall in love with someone from a different world. Someone raised with polished floors, designer dresses, and weekends spent in boutique hotels. When my son introduced me to Simone, I felt genuine joy. She was polite, well-spoken, always beautifully dressed. She called me ma'am at first, then slowly warmed into calling me by my name. I never judged her. I never judged her background, her privilege, or her parents' wealth. Those things were not her fault. She didn't choose the life she was born into any more than I chose mine. Still, I sensed something small, subtle, but sharp. A flicker of discomfort in her eyes whenever she stepped into my modest apartment. A pause before she sat on my old couch. A certain tone when she mentioned the things she grew up with. It wasn't malicious, just uninformed. A woman raised in excess often doesn't understand what it's like to survive on the bare minimum. I didn't blame her. Life teaches us through exposure, and she hadn't seen the world from my vantage point. What concerned me wasn't her, it was her parents. Every time she spoke about them, her voice shifted. Their standards. Their opinions. Their expectations. Their obsession with status and image. They came from money, built more money, and wrapped their identities around it. They looked down on anyone below their financial level, even if they never said it outright. And my son, well, he tried to blend into their world. Tried to impress them. Tried to stand tall beside Simone. I saw it, even though he thought he was hiding it from me. He started dressing differently. Speaking differently. Choosing restaurants I had never even heard of. And beneath all that effort, I felt a weight growing between us, one he didn't want to acknowledge. Then came the phone call that confirmed it. The call where he invited me to dinner with Simone's parents. The call where his voice trembled, not with excitement, but with discomfort. The call that revealed something I hadn't prepared myself to hear. He told them I lived a very simple life. He told them I worked small office jobs. He told them I didn't have much. Not lies. But not the whole truth either. And suddenly, the life I had built, quiet, honest, humble, felt like something he was ashamed of. That was the moment the story truly began. Not at the restaurant. Not at the dinner table. Not in the humiliation that followed. But in the quiet ache of that phone call. And the realization that sometimes the people you love most are the ones who underestimate you the deepest. It was a Tuesday afternoon when my phone rang. A quiet, ordinary moment that should have meant nothing. But the second I heard my son's voice, I knew something was wrong. A mother senses these things. His tone was tight, too controlled, as if he had rehearsed the words before dialing my number. "Mom, can we talk for a second?" he asked. There was hesitation. That alone set my heart on edge. "Of course," I said, wiping my hands on a dish towel as I stood in my tiny kitchen. "What is it?" He cleared his throat. "Simone's parents are in town. They want to meet you. We're having dinner with them this Saturday at a restaurant." A pause. A very nice restaurant. There it was, his discomfort slipping through the cracks. I see, I replied softly. And why do you sound like you're asking for forgiveness instead of giving an invitation? He went silent. A long, heavy silence that carried more meaning than any explanation. Finally, he mumbled, I just want everything to go smoothly. Smoothly. Such a simple word, but the way he said it twisted something inside my chest. I want them to like you, he continued quickly. And I don't want anyone to feel uncomfortable. Anyone. Not them. Not me. Anyone. A neat way to avoid pointing fingers. I leaned against the counter, my heart sinking like a stone. Do they know anything about me? I asked. His breathing changed, shallow and uneasy. I told them you work in an office. And that you live, modestly. Modestly. A polite word for poor, dressed up to sound gentle. I swallowed. Did you say anything else? No, he said quickly. Too quickly. Just that you're a simple woman who lives alone and manages fine on your own. A simple woman. Manages. Fine. Each word landed like a quiet blow. I wasn't angry. Not yet. Just hurt. Deeply, profoundly hurt. Not because he had lied, he hadn't. But because he had stripped me down to the smallest version of myself. As if my life, my effort, my sacrifices, had been reduced to a few bland sentences meant to reassure wealthy strangers. I gripped the edge of the counter. And why did you tell them that? More silence. Because, he finally said, voice shrinking, I didn't want them to judge you. Judge me. Me, the woman who raised him, protected him, sacrificed for him. The woman whose value he believed needed cushioning when standing next to his in-laws. And that was when a suspicion sparked inside me. Small at first, then growing like a flame. Your wife's parents, I said slowly, what are they like? Another pause. Another crack in his confidence. They're successful, he said. Very successful. They can be particular. Particular. Another softened word. It didn't fool me. I closed my eyes. I could almost imagine them, stiff postures, expensive clothes, polished smiles, eyes that measure your worth before you even speak. I see, I whispered. And you think meeting me, as I am, might embarrass you? No, he snapped, too fast, too defensive. Mom, that's not what I meant. But it was. His panic only confirmed it. And that was the moment, the exact second, something inside me hardened. Not out of spite. Not out of revenge. But out of pure, quiet clarity. If their world measured people by wealth, then I would show them what they expected. Exactly what they expected. All right, I told my son calmly. I'll be there. Don't worry about a thing. He sighed with relief. Thank you, Mom. After he hung up, I remained standing in that silent kitchen, my mind turning over the possibilities. If Simone's parents were really the kind of people who looked down on others, then meeting me, the version of me they assumed existed, would reveal who they truly were. And so the decision was made, right there between the hum of my old refrigerator and the ache in my chest. I would go to that dinner as a poor, innocent, fragile mother. And let them show their true selves on their own. After that phone call, I stood alone in my quiet apartment, letting the weight of everything settle over me. I wasn't angry, not yet. What I felt was something heavier, something only age can truly define, a mixture of disappointment, clarity, and a strange, simmering curiosity. If they wanted to judge me, then I wanted to see how far their judgment would go. The idea took root gently at first, almost shyly, but within minutes it became firm. I would not dress up. I would not force myself into a version of respectability they deemed acceptable. I would appear exactly as they imagined me, a poor, fragile old woman with nothing to offer but a polite smile. A simple test of character, though I suspected I already knew the result. I walked to my small closet, sliding open the creaky wooden door. Inside hung clothes collected over decades. Nothing fancy, nothing fashionable. My fingers skimmed past my better blouses and stopped on a faded dress I hadn't worn in years. A soft, washed-out brown thing with thinning fabric and a loose neckline. It looked tired, worn, as though it had survived as many struggles as I had. Perfect, I murmured. I laid it across my bed, then reached for a pair of old shoes with peeling soles. I hesitated for just a moment. Those shoes had carried me through storms, long shifts, and long walks home after work. But tonight, they would serve a different purpose. I tied my gray hair into a loose, messy bun, leaving strands falling around my face. I didn't want to look polished or put together. I wanted to look easily judged, easily dismissed. At the mirror, I studied my reflection. The woman looking back at me wasn't who I truly was. She wasn't the mother who survived 2 jobs at once, who built a life from scratch, who held her head high even when life tried to push it down. No, this version was softer, smaller, almost invisible. Exactly what they would expect. A pang of sadness struck me, deep and unexpected. Pretending to be less than myself wasn't difficult. It was frightening how quickly I could shrink if I allowed myself to. How easily society pushes older women into invisibility. I straightened lightly, touching the mirror as if steadying the woman in the reflection. "This is just a mask," I whispered. "Their reactions will tell me everything." I grabbed my oldest canvas tote bag, faded, frayed at the corners, and placed inside a simple wallet, a handkerchief, and nothing more. No jewelry. No makeup. No hint of the life I had truly lived. The next morning, as Saturday approached, I felt strangely calm. There was no fear, only a quiet readiness. Decades of watching people had taught me one thing: when you strip away appearances, you uncover truth. Real truth. And I was ready for theirs. By the time I stepped out of my apartment that evening, dressed in my disguise, I felt like a shadow of myself. Just another elderly woman heading out into the city, unnoticed and unimportant. Exactly what they wanted to see. Exactly what I needed them to see. With that, I headed toward the restaurant, toward the night that would expose everything. The taxi ride to the restaurant felt unusually long. Streetlights streaked across the window as the city moved in blurred lines, but inside the cab, time seemed to slow. My heart wasn't racing, age tends to steady it, but there was a heaviness in my chest, a quiet anticipation. Not fear. Not dread. Something deeper, the feeling you get when you know the truth is waiting on the other side of a door. And that truth was seated at a dinner table, dressed in wealth and polished manners. When the taxi pulled up to the entrance, I paused before stepping out. The restaurant was one of those places where everything gleamed, the tall glass doors, the perfectly trimmed plants, even the doorman's uniform. A world clearly designed for people who felt entitled to luxury. I adjusted the strap of my faded tote bag, smoothed my wrinkled dress, and walked forward. The doorman opened the door with a smile that faltered the second he took me in. His eyes flicked over my shoes, my hair, the dress that had seen better years. The smile tightened. Just like that, I was categorized. I felt it. And strangely, it confirmed I was about to see exactly what I came for. Inside, the restaurant was warm and dimly lit, filled with low murmurs and clinking glasses. I scanned the room until I spotted my son. He was standing near a large table by the window. Straight-backed, clearly nervous, tugging at his sleeve as though trying to appear more composed than he felt. When his eyes found me, his expression faltered. His smile was forced, wobbling like a candle flame in the wind. He glanced at my dress, my shoes, my bag, and his discomfort became painfully obvious. "Mom," he said, stepping forward quickly. "You made it." "Of course," I answered, smiling gently. "You asked me to be here." But even as I spoke, his eyes darted behind him toward the table, as if checking whether anyone had witnessed my arrival. Simone stood a few steps away. My daughter-in-law, the woman who had married my son, who had promised to build a life with him, looked breathtaking in a soft cream dress, her hair perfectly styled. She gave me a kiss on the cheek, polite but cold, like a gesture given out of duty rather than affection. "Hello, Mother," she said, though her voice lacked warmth. Her eyes traveled over my outfit. It was quick, but not quick enough to hide the flicker of judgment. Then I saw them, her parents. Veronica and Daniel. They sat with poised elegance, like people accustomed to attention. Veronica wore an emerald dress that shimmered even in the dim lighting, her jewelry catching the glow like tiny suns. Her hair was tied in a flawless bun, her posture straight enough to rival royalty. Daniel was equally well dressed, his watch shining like a statement piece rather than a timekeeping tool. As I approached, they both stood, not out of respect, but out of obligation. "Mom," Simone said stiffly, "this is my mother, Veronica, and my father, Daniel." Veronica extended her hand. Her smile didn't reach her eyes. They flicked downward, taking in every inch of me, the faded fabric, the old shoes, the tired tote bag. In that one glance, I felt her assessment. Unimportant, unimpressive, unworthy. "A pleasure," she said with icy politeness. Daniel shook my hand next, but his grip was limp, indifferent. "Nice to meet you," he said, already glancing away. I was placed at the end of the table, the farthest seat, the one meant for someone of least importance. No one offered to help me with my chair. No one asked if I was comfortable. I sat down quietly, my palms resting on the worn fabric of my dress. My son took the seat beside me, avoiding my eyes. I wondered if he felt guilty, or if he feared his in-laws' reaction more than my hurt. A waiter approached with menus, thick, leather-bound ones filled with French words I pretended to struggle with. This was part of the disguise, after all. The elderly, naive mother who didn't belong in places like this. Veronica watched me fumble with the menu, her smile tightening into something smug. "Do you need help?" she asked sweetly, though the sweetness was laced with condescension. Yes, I replied softly. I'm afraid I'm not familiar with these dishes. She didn't hide her sigh. I'll choose something simple for her, she told the waiter. Something modest. The word hung heavy between us. Daniel nodded, adding, nothing too complicated. Their tone wasn't malicious, no, it was worse. It was dismissive. Casual. The way people talk about someone beneath them. Someone who doesn't require consideration. Simone stared at her napkin as though it held the answers to life's questions. She didn't defend me. She didn't even look up. I remained quiet, watching the scene unfold like a play I'd already seen the ending to. But what struck me wasn't their words, it was the ease with which they delivered them. The quiet confidence of people who believed their judgment was truth, and that their superiority was natural. In their eyes, I wasn't a mother. I wasn't a woman with a history. I wasn't someone who carried decades of resilience. I was simply less. And that was exactly what I wanted to see. Exactly what I came to reveal. The dinner hadn't truly begun yet, but the truth had already started to show itself, ugly, sharp, and unmistakably real. And as I folded my hands gently in my lap, I knew this was only the beginning. The real storm was still ahead. The clinking of glasses, the quiet laughter at nearby tables, the polished glow of chandeliers, all of it blended into a soft hum. But at our table, the air was heavy, as if every breath had to squeeze past something sharp. The waiter began pouring wine. Deep red, swirling like liquid jewels. Veronica lifted her glass delicately, swirling it as if she were conducting a performance. This one is from a special vineyard in France, she said loud enough for me to hear clearly. We visited there last summer. Very exclusive. Her eyes flicked to me, waiting for a reaction. I offered a small smile. How lovely. She took a slow sip, savoring the moment. Do you drink wine, Elara? Only on special occasions, I replied gently. And usually the cheaper kind. The corners of her lips twitched upward, not in friendliness but in satisfaction. I had given her exactly what she wanted, confirmation of her assumptions. Daniel joined in, gesturing toward his glass. It takes a refined palate to appreciate wine like this. Years of experience, travel, education. Simone nodded quickly, as if agreeing was mandatory. My son shifted in his seat. He opened his mouth, perhaps to change the subject, but Veronica cut in with practiced ease. We were just telling Simone earlier how important it is to experience quality. Life is too short to settle for less. Less. That word again. Always lingering like a quiet insult. The waiter placed the dishes in front of us. Veronica's plate was a beautifully arranged steak, Daniel's a truffle-infused dish, Simone's an elegant seafood entree. Then he set down mine. A small, simple pasta with barely any garnish. Cheap. Plain. The kind of dish chosen for someone they assumed couldn't appreciate anything more. Something modest, Veronica reminded the waiter, as if he might forget his assignment. I nodded with a timid smile. Thank you. Inside, I felt the first spark of anger. Not a fiery explosion, no, something colder, more controlled. Anger that came from being dismissed so effortlessly. As we ate, the conversation turned toward money, though they pretended it wasn't. Our hotel is lovely, Veronica said, dabbing her lips. $1,000 a night, but we enjoy comfort. Don't we, darling? Daniel nodded proudly. We earned it. Simone added softly, they've always been successful. Her voice held the same mixture of admiration and fear I'd heard before. Veronica looked at me again, her eyes scanning me like I was an exhibit. Alara, where exactly do you live? In a small apartment, I answered calmly. Standard, nothing special. Oh, she replied with a gentle sigh. It must be cozy. Cozy. The word coated in pity. And your job? Daniel asked. What is it you do again? I work in an office. Paperwork, mostly. Veronica's smile widened, polite yet cutting. Administrative work. That's nice. Honest work. Very humble. Humble is a virtue, I said quietly. Yes, she replied, but her expression said otherwise. Not once did they ask if I enjoyed my work. If I struggled. If I had dreams. To them, I was a story already written, a poor, aging woman patched together with thrift store fabric and small paychecks. My son clenched his jaw. I felt his discomfort, but he didn't speak. The conversation continued, each comment digging a little deeper. We helped Simone with the down payment on their house, Veronica said, resting her hand elegantly on her glass. $40,000. We wanted to ensure they started their marriage with stability. Daniel added, and their honeymoon. 3 weeks in Europe. We spared no expense. How wonderful, I said softly. And you? Veronica asked, tilting her head. Were you able to help Marcus with anything for the wedding? Or the house? The table fell silent. I felt the weight of the question like a stone dropped in still water. No, I replied gently. Just a small gift. Something meaningful to me. Veronica's smile tightened. Well, every little bit counts, I suppose. Every little bit counts. A dagger hidden behind silk. My son's fingers curled into fists. He stared down at his plate, ashamed, not of me, but of them. The waiter brought dessert next, a tiny, ornate confection for them, drizzled with gold flakes. Mine was a small, plain slice of cake. Veronica tapped her fork on her plate. This dessert is $30, but worth every penny. Only the best restaurants use edible gold. I nodded, keeping my expression innocent. I've never had gold before. They exchanged glances, subtle but loaded with meaning. Then Veronica folded her hands, her tone shifting. Alara, she began, since we are now family, it's important we discuss something openly. My pulse didn't quicken, but something inside me sharpened. This was it, the turn. She leaned in slightly. Marcus is our son too now, and we want the best for him. Stability, comfort, a future free of unnecessary burdens. My son looked up suddenly. Mom, don't listen. But she raised her hand, silencing him. Living alone at your age, she continued, with a limited income, it must be difficult. And naturally, Marcus worries about you. Her words were coated in concern, but the truth behind them was bitter. So, Daniel added, we've discussed offering you a small monthly allowance. Nothing extravagant. Just enough so Marcus won't feel pressured, so he can focus on his marriage. I stared at them, each word settling on the table like dust. An allowance. Not to help me. Not to support me. But to make me disappear. To remove the embarrassment of having someone like me connected to them. The humiliation sat heavy in my chest. And yet, beneath it, clarity crystallized. They weren't just judgmental. They were cruel. And in that moment, while the golden dessert glistened under the lamp, while my son's face twisted with shame, while Simone looked ready to crumble, I knew the time for pretending was nearing its end. Not yet. But soon. The night was far from over. The truth had only begun to unravel. The air around the table felt colder after they mentioned the allowance. Not icy in temperature, but in meaning, like a silent verdict had been handed down. An elderly woman, alone, not wealthy enough, not polished enough. A burden to be managed. A problem to be budgeted for. Veronica rested her hands lightly on the table, her posture so graceful it almost disguised the condescension beneath her words. Almost. Alara, she said softly, please don't misunderstand. We only want to help you. Truly. The false sweetness of her voice nearly made me laugh. Help me? No. They wanted to tidy me away like clutter in the corner of a room they didn't want guests to see. Daniel added, we feel this is best for everyone. A little financial support for your needs ensures Marcus doesn't feel obligated to, well, to stretch himself too thin. Stretch himself too thin. Another phrase carefully polished to sound compassionate while cutting deep. My son's head snapped up. His face was red, not from anger, but from humiliation. Mom, they didn't mean. But Daniel raised a hand, the gesture authoritative, practiced. Marcus, this is between adults right now. Let us finish. Between adults. As though my son suddenly wasn't one. As though he needed to sit quietly while the wealthy decided what to do with the poor woman who raised him. Simone looked horrified. Her eyes darted between her parents and me, guilt pooling in them like ink. She opened her mouth to speak, but Veronica touched her wrist lightly, an unspoken command. Think of this as an act of kindness, Veronica continued. We wouldn't want you to feel pressured to visit too often, or rely on Marcus for things he shouldn't have to worry about now that he's married. My breath stilled. She wasn't offering help. She was offering distance. A paid exit from my own son's life. So that their daughter wouldn't have a poor mother-in-law connected to her perfect image. So how much are we talking? I asked, my voice gentle, steady. Veronica brightened, mistaking my calm for submission. Well, nothing extravagant. Perhaps $500 a month. Maybe $700 if needed. Just something to give you comfort. Comfort. That word again. Comfort for them, not me. And in exchange? I asked, folding my hands neatly in my lap. Daniel leaned back, confident now that he believed I understood my place. In exchange, he said, we simply ask that you give Marcus and Simone space. Don't call too often. Don't visit unannounced. Don't place any burdens on them. Let them grow as a couple without feeling responsible for you. My son's forehead creased in horror. Dad, stop. Marcus, Veronica snapped, We are doing this for your own good. My son's jaw tightened, but he said nothing more. Conflict swirled in his eyes, pride, shame, rage, guilt, all crashing into each other. I looked around the table slowly, letting the silence deepen. Veronica's confident smile. Daniel's expectant nod. Simone's trembling fingers. Marcus's clenched fists. Every face told a story. Every expression revealed a truth. And something inside me settled, quiet, firm, unmovable. Not anger. Not sadness. Clarity. They believed they were being generous. They believed I should be grateful. They believed money gave them the right to dictate my relationship with my son. And they believed they had fully understood me. But they had not. Not even close. I took a slow breath and offered a gentle smile, the kind an old woman gives when she knows more than she says. I appreciate the offer, I whispered. Truly. It tells me exactly what I needed to know. Veronica's eyes sparkled with relief. Good. I'm glad we understand each other. Oh, I replied softly, we do. Completely. For the first time all night, I felt the shift deep in my bones, the turning of a tide they didn't see coming. Because the poor, quiet, insignificant mother they thought they were negotiating with was about to disappear. And the truth they had been blind to was about to rise to the surface. For a moment, no one spoke. The restaurant's soft piano music drifted between us, elegant and detached, completely unaware of the storm gathering at this table. I could feel every pair of eyes on me, waiting for my acceptance, for my gratitude, for the quiet obedience they believed was natural for someone like me. I placed my napkin carefully beside my plate. My hands didn't shake. My voice, when I finally spoke, wasn't timid or small. It was steady. An old truth rising to the surface. Veronica, I said calmly. Your offer is interesting. Truly. But I'm curious about something. Her eyebrows lifted in satisfaction. Of course. What would you like to ask? I kept my gaze gentle, almost innocent. You said $500 to $700 a month would be enough for me to live comfortably? She nodded. Yes. We felt it was fair. Fair. A word that tasted bitter coming from her. And you believe, I continued, that with that money, I could disappear? Give Marcus and Simone the space you think they need? Her smile widened. She believed we were finally aligning. Exactly. We don't want any strain on the newlyweds. Daniel nodded in approval. It's best for their future. I leaned forward slightly. And how much did you say you gave them for their house? 40,000, Veronica replied proudly. We spared no expense. And for the honeymoon? 15,000, she said, crossing her legs elegantly. 3 weeks touring Europe. I nodded slowly. So in total, about $55,000. Yes, Veronica said, sitting up straighter. Why? I smiled, softly, politely. Because I need to understand something. Daniel frowned. Understand what? How $55,000, I said, gave you the confidence to treat me the way you've treated me tonight. The table froze. Veronica blinked rapidly. Excuse me? I didn't raise my voice. I didn't need to. Age gives you a different kind of power, the kind that comes from knowing exactly when the ground beneath someone else is about to break. You've spent this entire evening measuring me by the fabric of my dress, the price of my shoes, and the size of my wallet, I continued. But not once, did you ask me who I am. Veronica swallowed. We didn't mean. Yes, I cut in gently, you did. Silence stretched like a held breath. My son stared at me, eyes widening. Simone looked pale, as if she were witnessing something she never expected. I rested my hands on the table. Let me tell you something you don't know. Something you never thought to ask. Veronica's voice wavered. What is that? I met her gaze squarely. I am not poor. Her lips parted. Confusion flickered. Then disbelief. Daniel scoffed softly. Elara, there's no need. But I continued, my voice quiet yet unshakable. I have been a senior operations executive for over 20 years. I manage teams across multiple countries. I sign contracts worth more than you've likely seen in a single lifetime. I make decisions that affect thousands of employees. And my monthly income, I paused just long enough to let the anticipation grow, is $40,000. Veronica's fork slipped from her hand. Daniel's posture stiffened as if someone had snapped a string inside him. My son's breath hitched. Mom, what? I turned to him gently. You never asked, sweetheart. And I never told you because I wanted you to grow independent, not entitled. Simone covered her mouth, whispering, 40,000? I nodded. Every month. And that doesn't include investments, bonuses, or company shares. Veronica looked as though the air had left her lungs. That's impossible. I tilted my head. Is it? Or did you simply assume your perception of me was truth? The color drained from her face. You pretended to be poor, she whispered. Yes, I said. I wanted to see how you treated a woman who had nothing. Daniel leaned forward, voice cracking. Why would you do that? Because, I replied, when you want to see a person's true character, you take away what they respect most, money. My son finally spoke, his voice trembling. Mom, why didn't you ever tell me? I touched his hand. Because I didn't want you to see me as a bank. I wanted you to build your own life. And you did. I'm proud of you. His eyes glossed with tears. Veronica abruptly stood, her chair scraping the floor. You deceived us. You embarrassed us. I shook my head calmly. No, Veronica. I didn't embarrass you. You embarrassed yourselves. I just watched. Her mouth opened and closed, struggling to form words. I continued, you offered me $700 to disappear from my son's life. I could offer you $1 million to prove you've ever treated someone without money with genuine kindness. But we both know you can't. She sank back into her chair, devastated. Daniel's voice cracked. You should have told us who you really were. And you, I replied softly, should have treated me with basic respect regardless of who I was. Simone wiped her eyes. Mother. Dad, please stop. But they had nothing left to say. The balance of the evening had shifted completely, not because of my income, but because the illusion they relied on had shattered. Their superiority. Their judgment. Their certainty that wealth defined worth. I sat back, exhaling slowly, letting decades of swallowed silence finally dissolve. I don't need your money, I said. And I don't need your approval. I only needed the truth. And tonight, you've shown me exactly who you are. Veronica's voice was barely a whisper. What will you do now? I looked around the table, at the stunned faces, at the fractured pride. Now? I said softly. Now I finish my dinner. And then? I decide what kind of relationship I want with people who see the world the way you do. And with that, the mask I'd worn all night fell away completely. The poor, innocent mother they had judged so quickly was gone. And the truth of who I really was, quiet, steady, unshakable, finally stood in her place. The silence after my reveal settled over the table like a thick fog. The kind of silence that forces everyone to confront themselves, no excuses, no disguises, no polite distractions. Just truth, raw and undeniable. Veronica stared at her untouched dessert as though it had personally betrayed her. The proud woman who had spent the entire evening performing elegance now looked small, fragile, stripped of the armor she wore so effortlessly. Her posture had wilted. Her hands trembled slightly against the napkin she kept folding and unfolding. Daniel, once so confident, now seemed equally lost. He avoided my eyes, staring instead at the tablecloth as if it held answers he'd never looked for before tonight. Simone broke first. Mom. Dad, her voice quivered, cracking as she spoke. How could you say those things to her? How could you treat her like she was beneath you? Her words sliced through the air. Veronica's eyes glossed. We didn't know. That's the problem, Simone snapped, her composure slipping. You didn't care to know. Daniel rubbed his forehead, exhaling shakily. We made assumptions. Poor ones. My son, who had been silent for too long, finally found his voice. Those weren't just assumptions, he said, struggling to keep steady. You humiliated her. My mother. The word mother hung there like a fracture line splitting the evening in two. I'm sorry, Simone whispered, turning to me with genuine remorse. I didn't realize how awful it all sounded until you spoke up. Her sincerity softened something in me, just slightly. My son reached for my hand under the table. Mom. I'm so sorry, he murmured. I should have stood up earlier. I should have told them the truth about you. About everything. I squeezed his fingers gently. You were caught between people you care about, I said. It happens. But inside, I knew he had seen something tonight he could never forget. Veronica straightened, trying to salvage some dignity. Alara, we were wrong, she said, her voice barely holding together. Terribly wrong. Our behavior was inexcusable. I nodded once. I appreciated the apology, but I wasn't ready to heal the wound for her. She needed to sit with it a little longer. Daniel cleared his throat, attempting sincerity. If there's anything we can do to make this right. There is, I said calmly. For heads turned toward me. Treat people with respect, I continued. Not because they have money. Not because they can benefit you. But because it's the right thing to do. Veronica swallowed hard, You're right, she said softly. I don't know why we acted the way we did. But she did know. They both did. They had built entire lives around valuing wealth above humanity. I reached for my purse slowly, setting it on the table. Their eyes followed, confused. Dinner is on me, I said. The shock on their faces would have been amusing under different circumstances. Oh, that's not necessary, Daniel sputtered. We invited you. I insist, I replied evenly. It wasn't about the bill. It wasn't even about pride. It was symbolic. An unspoken reminder of the power they believed they held just hours ago. The waiter arrived with the check. I slipped my card inside. When he lifted the booklet, his eyes widened at the type of card it was, black, heavy, unmistakable. Veronica and Daniel noticed. A flush crept up Veronica's neck. She knew exactly what it meant. Simone exhaled shakily, covering her mouth with her fingers. My son closed his eyes, as if realizing how deeply he had underestimated me. When the waiter returned, he bowed slightly. Thank you, ma'am. Everything is settled. Ma'am. Respect, genuine this time. Not because of what I wore. Not because of who I knew. Because the truth had finally taken its place at the table. I stood slowly. I think that's enough for tonight, I said. We all learned something. My son rose immediately. Simone followed. Veronica and Daniel hesitated before standing as well. Elara, Veronica whispered, tears threatening. I don't expect forgiveness. But I hope, maybe with time. I didn't answer immediately. I let the moment breathe. Let them feel the full weight of what had unfolded. Time will tell, I said finally. Change doesn't come from apologies, it comes from actions. Their heads lowered. With that, I turned toward the exit, my son on one side, Simone on the other. Behind us, Veronica and Daniel remained still, humbled, shaken, and finally, silent. And for the first time that night, I felt the beginnings of peace. The moment we stepped outside, the cool night air hit my cheeks, washing away the last traces of tension from the restaurant. The city around us was alive, cars passing, distant chatter, the hum of streetlights, but I felt strangely separate from it all, as though my mind had stepped into a quieter world entirely. My son walked beside me, shoulders heavy, steps slow. He opened the taxi door for me, something he hadn't done in years, and slid in after me. The door shut with a soft thud, sealing us inside an island of silence. For several seconds, neither of us spoke. The cab pulled away from the curb, the city lights smearing across the windows like brushstrokes. I watched them drift by, feeling the weight of everything that had happened settle into place, not harshly, but with a kind of finality. My son finally exhaled, a long, trembling breath. Mom. I can't believe any of that happened. I can't believe I let it happen. His voice was thick with regret. I touched his arm gently. You were overwhelmed. Torn between two worlds. That's not an easy place to stand. I should have defended you, he whispered. I should have told them who you were. What you've done. What you survived. Instead, I just let them treat you like you were nothing. I shook my head softly. They didn't treat me like I was nothing. They treated me like they assumed I was nothing. I paused. But assumptions only define the people who make them, not the people they judge. He swallowed hard. I'm so ashamed. You should feel hurt, I corrected gently. Not ashamed. Hurt means you care. Shame keeps you stuck. He leaned back against the seat, eyes glistening. You didn't deserve any of it. I looked out the window again, watching a couple laugh as they walked down the street. Life rarely gives us what we deserve, I murmured. But it always gives us clarity. And that was what tonight offered, more than anger, more than humiliation. Clarity. A rare, sharp moment when the truth of people revealed itself without filters or excuses. I thought about aging, how the world becomes louder, yet your heart becomes quieter. How you begin to see patterns in human behavior with startling clarity. How dignity becomes something you protect fiercely, even when others fail to see it. The taxi slowed as we approached my apartment. My son reached for my hand. I won't forget tonight, he said softly. And I won't let anything like that happen again. I squeezed his fingers. Good, I said, smiling faintly. Because tonight was just the beginning. The real change happens after. The car stopped. I stepped out into the soft glow of the streetlights, feeling lighter than I had in hours. The truth had been revealed. The masks had fallen. And for once, I walked toward my building not as someone underestimated, but as someone finally, undeniably seen. The next morning, sunlight streamed through my curtains, soft and warm, but I woke with a heaviness lingering in my chest, a quiet ache left behind from the previous night. I brewed a cup of tea and sat by the window, letting the steam rise against my face. I hoped the day would bring clarity, maybe even peace. But before I could take my second sip, my phone buzzed. It was my son. I hesitated for a moment, then answered. His voice came through immediately, rough, exhausted, as though he hadn't slept at all. Mom, are you awake? Yes, I said gently. I'm here. He exhaled shakily. I've been thinking about everything. All night. I couldn't stop replaying it. I remained quiet, giving him space. I don't know how I let things get that far, he continued. I don't know how I didn't see it sooner. The way they treated you. The way I let their world influence the way I presented you. His voice cracked. You deserved better. Marcus, I said softly, we all make mistakes. Especially when we're trying to impress the people we think matter. But you're the one who matters, he whispered. You always were. His words came from a place deeper than guilt. This was realization, painful and raw. I guess, part of me wanted them to accept me so badly that I forgot who I am, he said. I let their standards affect the way I saw everything, even you. And that's the part one can't forgive myself for. I closed my eyes. Then forgive yourself by changing, I answered. Not by drowning in regret. He breathed in, shaky but determined. I want to. I will. What they did last night. I won't stand for it again. I'll set boundaries. I'll make sure they understand exactly where you stand in my life. I could hear the resolve forming in him, strong, steady, unshakable. And Mom, he added softly, I want to know your life. The real one. The parts you never told me. I want to understand everything you carried alone. That touched a part of me I hadn't felt in years, a tender place mothers keep hidden. You'll learn, I said with a small smile. Little by little. When you're ready. He let out a long breath, full of warmth this time. Thank you for last night. Thank you for everything. I just hope you can forgive me. I already have, I replied. You found your voice. That's what matters. A quiet moment passed between us, one of those rare, precious pauses when love speaks louder than words. I'll come by later, he said softly. I want to see you. I'll be here, I answered. When the call ended, I held my warm cup of tea, feeling something I hadn't felt since before the dinner, hope. Not because the night had gone well, far from it. But because my son finally saw me. Not as the woman he feared would embarrass him, but as his mother. And as someone worth standing up for. It was late afternoon when I heard the knock, soft, hesitant, as if the visitor wasn't sure they should even be there. I opened the door and found Simone standing on the landing, her hands clasped tightly in front of her. She looked nothing like the confident woman at the restaurant. Her eyes were red, her shoulders drawn inward, and her expression carried the weight of someone who had been forced to confront uncomfortable truths. May I come in? She asked quietly. Of course, I said, stepping aside. She entered slowly, taking in my modest living room with new eyes, not the eyes of someone comparing, but someone realizing how wrong they had been. She sat on the sofa, barely meeting my gaze. Thank you for seeing me, she whispered. I settled into the chair opposite her. You're always welcome here, Simone. For a moment she just sat there, picking at her own fingers, unable to begin. Then it all spilled out at once. I'm so sorry, she said, her voice breaking. For what they did. For what I didn't do. For being silent while they treated you like you were nothing. Her words trembled with sincerity. I let them hang for a moment. You were caught between loyalty and discomfort, I said gently. It's hard to speak up against your parents. It shouldn't have been, she replied firmly. I should have said something. I should have stopped it. I didn't, and I regret it more than I can explain. I studied her carefully. There was no performance here. No defensiveness. Just genuine remorse, raw and unfiltered. She continued, I've lived my whole life in a world where money defines everything, worth, status, respect. I never questioned it because it was all I knew. But last night, you made me see how ugly that world can be. How ugly I acted by letting it continue. Her voice cracked again. You didn't deserve any of it. I nodded slowly. And yet, here we are. Talking. That means something. Simone looked up, tears brimming. I want to make things right. I want you to know I value you, not for your income, not for your appearance, but for the mother you've been to Marcus and the woman you are. Her vulnerability softened me. Not completely. Not instantly. But enough. We'll take it one step at a time, I said. Respect isn't restored overnight, but it can be rebuilt. Relief washed over her face. Thank you, she whispered. Truly. As she left my apartment, I realized something unexpected. Last night hadn't just exposed the truth. It had planted the first seed of change, perhaps in all of us. In the quiet days that followed, I found myself reflecting more than usual. Not about money, or status, or the sting of judgment, those things come and go like shifting weather. What stayed with me was something far deeper, the realization of how easily people forget the weight of another person's life. When you grow older, people tend to look past you. They see gray hair, wrinkles, simple clothing, and they think they already know your story. They forget you were once young, once strong, once building dreams and carrying burdens they could never imagine. They forget how much history is etched into your hands and how many sacrifices rest silently beneath your smile. That night revealed something painful but valuable. Some people only respect those they believe have value. And some people never bother asking what value truly means. Veronica and Daniel taught me that wealth can blind a heart faster than any darkness. Simone taught me that guilt can be transformed into growth. And my son, he reminded me that even when we fail each other, love can still find its way back. But most importantly, I learned something about myself. I don't need to hide my strength to protect others. And I don't need to shrink so others can feel tall. Dignity isn't something anyone can give or take away. It's something you choose every day, with every breath, every boundary, every truth you finally decide to speak out loud. If you've enjoyed this story, one told from the heart, from years of living, learning, and enduring, please subscribe to the channel. Your support helps these real, emotional stories continue. There are many more waiting to be told, and I'd love to share them with you.